Hi, my name is Mitchell Berry, and my presentation is on Zombieland. I chose Zombieland as my presentation because my favorite types of movies are horror, especially with cannibalistic zombies, and comedies with awkward moments. Zombieland is about a young man named Columbus who is trapped in a zombie apocalypse. He's not one of those brave and courageous characters you see in most movies. He's a modern-day dork that doesn't get much sunlight and doesn't have many friends. As the story moves on, he meets three new people. Tallahassee, a man with more bravery than Braveheart, and then there's Wichita and Little Rock, the conniving sister duo who steal Tallahassee's car. If you fast forward, Wichita and Little Rock run away from Columbus and Tallahassee but are trapped by a horde of zombies in a theme park. Columbus and Tallahassee are determined to save them and lure the horde of zombies to another area and blast them away. Wichita, blown away by Columbus's thoughtfulness, falls in love with him, and they live together for God knows how long. Ruben Fletcher is the director of Zombieland, but he did not only direct that movie. He also created and developed TV shows such as Robin Big and Rob Dyrdek's Fantasy Factory, both shows about the everyday wild life of Rob Dyrdek. Fletcher also assisted Miguel Arteta, another director, on movies such as Chuck and Buck and The Good Girl. Zombieland was filmed within eastern USA in Atlanta, Hapeville, Morrow, Decatur, Noonan, and Powder Springs, Georgia, and was released on October 2nd in 2009 by Columbia Pictures. Zombieland isn't the same as the old-school slow-walking zombie movies where they all shout brains and such. This movie has sprinting, flesh-eating, supercharged maniacs that will consume anything with a pulse. The 5-minute extract starts out in the end of the movie where Columbus and Tallahassee rescue Wichita and Little Rock from a zombie-infested theme park. The two girls are trapped on a certain ride and can't escape, so Columbus and Tallahassee lure the zombie horde away in order to keep the two girls safe. The visual style of Zombieland is post-apocalyptic destruction. Everything you see throughout the movie is as if there had been an earthquake or a hurricane. You see piled up and exploded cars, deserted cities and towns, and rotting bodies littering every street. One icon that may cause questions for some people is the number 3 that is painted on Tallahassee's car. The reason he paints this is because his favorite NASCAR driver, Dale Earnhardt, puts it on his car as well. Another icon would be the Twinkie that Tallahassee passionately searches for throughout the story. The main actor you see throughout the entire movie are Jesse Eisenberg as Columbus, who is a very easily frightened young man, Woody Harrelson as Tallahassee, who is a tough, fear-nothing redneck of the story, and then there's Emma Stone as Wichita and Abigail Breslin as Little Rock, who are the conniving sister duo that trick Columbus and Tallahassee into giving up their weapons and vehicles throughout the movie. The product design is amazing. Producer Gavin Polone hired great makeup artists who created gruesome, realistic zombies. He reserved the theme park Wild Adventures Water and Theme Park, which you hear as Pacific Playland as the characters are discussing about. One of my favorite camera angles throughout the entire movie is the shot where Columbus and Tallahassee are walking down a street in an abandoned city, and as they talk, the camera is at a waist shot and follows them diagonally from the side, and when their conversation ends, the camera stops and they walk out of the shot dramatically. A dominant icon would be Tallahassee and his bad, don't mess with me type of attitude. It makes the viewer think, wow, if I was in an apocalyptic zombie nightmare with one person, it would be this guy. Camera distance is varied between the course of the movie. Close-ups are used mostly because it shows emotions from each character. Long shots aren't used very much because the director wants the viewer to stay focused on the characters' faces and the emotions that they express. The director used long shots primarily only to show surroundings and what the settings are. Throughout the movie, the color contrast is pretty vibrant. You see lots of different colors in which to keep the film entertaining. The editing style would be realistic because all the shots are long but not too long and are part of a sequence that tells a story, all while showing emotion from each character. A point in the movie where time is accelerated or manipulated is when the 4 main characters are driving down a highway and there's a series of jump cuts where each character gets a turn to drive. If you pay attention to between each jump, you can see in the background that the days turns to night and night turns to day. There are 2 flashbacks in this movie, the one with Tallahassee where he's living life with his dog, and then there's the one where he's living life with his son. In the beginning, we find out he had a dog that was taken by zombies, but then we find out that it was his young child rather than a dog. An example of a visual metaphor would be the standoff between Columbus and Tallahassee in the beginning when they first meet. There's the awkward tension between the two, and eventually Columbus gives up. Seconds after, Tallahassee knocks down the motorcycle in which Columbus was hiding behind during the standoff as a sign or way to say, "Don't mess with me." The sound style of this movie is realistic, which is the sound that correlates to what is happening inside the story, as in gunshots, car engines, zombie growls, or the sound from the roller coaster rides during the Pacific Playland scene. There are a few Foley sounds such as footsteps and creaking sounds from an old and burned up car. The film contains a lot of non-synchronous sound, which is the sound that is added later on after filming. There are a lot of gunshot sounds that have been added later on, along with growls and screams from zombies. If this movie was broken down to a basic storyline, the structure of it would be that a nerdy boy who lives in a zombie-infested world meets up with other survivors and undergoes hardships and forms a bond with each of these new people in his life. Zombieland is plot-driven because the main character, Columbus, only reacts to things that happen during the story. He doesn't act on his own. The nature of dialogue in the movie shows diversity between each character.
You don't know who Willie Nelson is?
No.
Willie Nelson.
Yeah, no, I don't.
Like Tallahassee's accent tells us he's from the South. Humor can be found everywhere in this movie. Like in the beginning, there is awkward humor where Columbus is talking to his neighbor 409, known as Amber Heard, as he points out his faults and phobias, like phobias in dish towels and clowns and small neighborhoods. Others would be the hilarious way Tallahassee reacts when Little Rock tosses him a Twinkie by tearing up and eating it like it was his last meal. An ironic and humorous part is where Columbus must face his two biggest fears put into one, a clown zombie. This shows irony towards his character. I believe the thematic message is even though your life can be a total hell, there is always someone there to help you get up and get through it. Like Columbus, for example, he lived all alone during the apocalypse and found Tallahassee, Wichita, and Little Rock, and with their help, he realized that life is always worth living. Features determining the genre of Zombieland are the flesh-eating, disease-spreading zombies that inhabit the world inside the movie, such as we see chaos and ravenous zombies consume people out on the streets. All of this tells us that it's a horror-type genre. Other features that would determine genre are the awkward and ironic moments, such as Columbus talking about his phobias, and Tallahassee's reaction to when he gets his Twinkie in the end. The extract meets the genre because there are a few hilarious moments, such as when Tallahassee is diving over the counter in the toy stand and then pops back up. Then the comedic part turns into horror after he dives because there is an extreme large group of zombies sprinting to him in order to rip him apart. Another part that adds ironic and scary visions is when Columbus must face a clown zombie, which is his two most biggest fears. This is funny because early in the story he tells you that his biggest fear, greater than even zombies, is that he has a fear of clowns.
I was always kind of phobic. I found lots of things disturbing. I like undertow or department store Santas, being alone with a baby. But the thing I fear more than anything, yes, even more than zombies, fucking clowns.
This shows ironic comedy from making fun of Columbus's fear, but plus adding horror to the scene by making the clown have blood and flesh seeping out of its mouth. The reason I chose Zombieland was because I have two types of genres that I love the most in every single movie, which is horror and comedy. So when I found out that this movie had both horror and comedy combined into one, I jumped on it. I had already seen Zombieland many times before, and it became one of my favorite horror movies next to Dawn of the Dead. But Zombieland had just as much gruesome flesh-eating monsters compared to Dawn of the Dead, plus funny and ironic moments that all collaborated into one great movie. Zombieland is an amazing movie that I think everyone should see at least a dozen times. It has good acting, funny jokes, dramatic scenes, zombies, and thrilling and suspenseful moments. It will make you laugh, in some parts it will make you cry, and it will make you jump out of your seat.